Welcome to the Talking to Kids About Sex interview series. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ayna Manes, educator and coach, helping parents talk openly about sex so that their kids have safe and healthy sexual relationships from the start. Today, I'm speaking with Naomi Aldort, author of Raising Our Children, Raising Ourselves. She's a parenting and family counselor, writer, and public speaker, and her advice columns appear in parenting magazines around the world. Welcome, Naomi.
Thank you. Wonderful being with you, Anya.
Thanks for being here. Well, I'm starting everyone off with the same question. I'm wondering, the sex talk, right? You're an expert. I'm sure with your background, you have a favorite story about a parent's experience of giving or not giving that sex talk. And I'm wondering if you'd be willing to share that with us.
Well, maybe I'll share a couple of small ones. When I hear this question, I think, gee, which one do I tell? There's so many.
Yeah.
So maybe something personal that I've never said before, because people hear other interviews, which is my own. I was 9 years old when I was riding with a girlfriend, a neighbor, on a bicycle back from school. She's ahead of me. I'm in her back. And she's telling me, I'm not even seeing her face, right? And she's telling me about the biology class she just had. And zero talk about sex from my parents. Absolute zero. And she's telling me the whole thing about how you make love, how, biologically she's saying it. She's telling, I think, about animal, and then she says it's the same with people. And I come home and I want to strike a conversation with my mother, of course, and find out, well, is this how it's happening? And so I tell my mom the whole thing. She's washing the floor as I'm talking to her. Completely disengaged. She had a lot of problems with that, I assume now as an adult. And I finish my story with, is that true? And my sex education was one word, yes. That was it.
That was it? Okay.
I never learned more, and I have to say, as a teenager, I was taken by surprise, and my real educator was my first boyfriend.
Yes.
And
a lot of us had that experience.
I was lucky to have a good one. But before that, there were some semi-molestation on the way. It wouldn't have happened if I knew better.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's a great place to start.
Yeah.
How do you help parents clear their own baggage, their own shame, their emotions, their blocks around sex so that it's easier to have those conversations with their kids?
Yeah. In terms of clearing themselves, I do a lot of work in that area. And I do something similar to the work of Byron Katie, which is looking at your thought, whatever you had, the baggage that you have from your childhood and from your emotional baggage, and we write it down. We look at it so we can actually see, and then we explore it in a systematic way to see what of it is true, what happened to you, how you reacted as a child, how do you feel about it now, depending on what comes up for the person, so that we can look clearly, because sometimes grown up don't realize that they were mistreated actually, and when they work as adult, they realize, oh, it didn't even occur to me that that was not appropriate because of the context and the lack of about it. And in other times, there is almost an overtalk that is too exaggerated. Like I had a client who was sure she was raped as a teenager. But then when we did this kind of work on it, it turned out she was with a cousin's that's a little older than her when she was 14 or 15, and a couple of his friends, boys. And she was very excited. She wanted to try sex. She was the girl, they were the boys. And she flirted and created whatever level of sexuality she had, and they enjoyed themselves, and she enjoyed herself. But then looking back, then you start doing therapy, and you're like, oh my God, I was raped, right? And so we cause ourselves damage going backwards. So what she worked with me on is actually realizing that seeking that pleasure was not a bad thing. Maybe with a little more parental guidance. That wasn't the best way to do it, or the best age to do it, with threesome like that, without she's going. To look at that, but mostly to forgive herself and to realize it wasn't rape. And it was a great relief for her. Her sexual problems with her husband vanished overnight.
Wow.
She had severe problems because every time they had sex, she had so much. She would stop it. She would say, this reminds me of being raped, and you're doing this, and you're doing this, and you're pushing here. And then I have all these movies playing back. And then when it wasn't raped anymore, and instead she learned about pleasure and connected back to what happened from a point of view of, oh, I chose that and actually enjoyed myself. Now she enjoyed it with her husband too, because the whole baggage was like, whoops, gone.
I think that's an amazing point, because so many of us have trouble talking about and sort of owning the pleasure piece, especially with kids. How do you help parents with that pleasure piece? Because that is key, right? I mean, obviously sex is pleasurable.
I have a story for that. Stories are the best.
Yes.
I raised 3 boys, and like a clock at age 5, 6, they play with themselves. All So the way you teach pleasure is you actually acknowledge that it's pleasure. So I would say to each one of them when they did that, that must be a lot of fun. The penis is a lot of fun to play with. And it's fine, it's just, and then I remember it was so clear, and there was no inhibition, and we also had a lot of nudity in the house in a natural way. And one day we were going off island. We live on an island, so we had to ride the ferry and go to some concert or some event in the theater. And my youngest was 6 years old, and was in his few months of hand in the pants, and it just stays there the whole day. And so when we were going, and we don't go places very often like this, so we were going for a whole day and an overnight at a friend. And I said to him, when we go on the ferry and when we go to the theater, it's a good idea not to touch yourself. People don't like to do that in public. And he said, fine, And he remembered it, and I forgot. He never touched himself. We go in the ferry, we drive, we go to the theater, we're in the theater. But his ease about it was amazing, and only was revealed to me when we got to my friend's house, who is very easygoing and healthy in sexuality and issues and nudity. And he comes to me all of a sudden. I'm talking to my friend, and my other kids are playing, and all of a sudden, the little one comes to me and says, Mom, now can I play with myself? And I said, yeah. At Andrea's, absolutely. And the punch, the beauty of this story to me is not only there is self-discipline, obviously.
Yes.
But it didn't, the way I presented it, it didn't make an issue out of it. It was like, okay, in those places we don't do it, but the pleasure is acknowledged as pleasure. And hey, Mom, I want to do my pleasure again. Is this a good place?
Yeah.
It's that simplicity. So I would say the most important thing for parents to do is have a benign attitude and have a positive attitude about pleasure in general. And when the questions about sexuality come up, respond to them naturally, like you say, the color of your eyes. I remember a wonderful, smart woman when I was a kid myself, when somebody was saying that her son has a very long penis. Or his sister said, I don't remember. And she said, yeah, I have brown eyes. Yep. And you have pointy nose. And that everybody laughed. And I was, they were very, very healthy that way kind of people. But benign attitude and talking about pleasure in general. It's like you caress a person, you kiss a person. You don't do it when it's not pleasant.
Yeah.
Ask permission. You respect the body. And you say, is that fun for you when I massage your feet this way? We want to touch each other only in a pleasing, pleasure kind of way. It's wonderful. And then and that's what I was looking for, the book I was telling you about. Before. And is it all right if I get up and look for it?
Sure.
Because I may know where it is, and if I do, it would be easy, but I put it in a different place from you. Now, here it is. So this is in a foreign language, but this is the kind of, it's called A Baby is Born, and it has pictures as straightforward as this. Let's see. You know.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
and it says under this one that it feels really good, talking about the pleasure. And when daddy and mommy kiss each other and it feels very good, then there is a feeling that wanting to connect the penis to the vagina. And then it shows pictures of them standing naked next to each other a few pages later with a baby. So in English, I haven't found a book, you know, with that kind of benign attitude, with that kind of simplicity, which I really like. But that's the most important thing is for parents themselves to work on themselves so they don't have a problem with that they can enjoy themselves. They can say to a child who touches them, I love feeling your hand on me. When dad, and to kiss in front of the kids with daddy and mommy, to hold each other and say we love doing that, we love each other. And when the question about sexuality itself comes, to just talk about it like about anything else.
That's really great, because what that brings up for me is how important it is to talk about sex, but also intimacy, because intimacy is totally different. And a lot of times kids think that the way to become intimate is to have sex. Right. And it's kind of the opposite way, right? You want to be intimate with somebody and be really close to somebody, and then based on that, get into a sexual relationship.
And that's one thing I absolutely talked to my kids about, and I always recommend to parents to talk about the progression of relationship from friendship through some intimacy, connection, emotional connection. And when you really love the person and are already very, very close to them, then like in this book, you may be moved to touch each other, to kiss each other. And there may be a long time between kissing to actually having sex. You have to know the person, to love them. And that it's a result of strong closeness and pleasure that comes from loving each other and from knowing each other really well. So that's really important to say that from the beginning and to model that in terms of the parents. And not everybody is parents together, but they can still talk about it.
Yeah.
Having been the mother and father.
Here's an interesting question, though. Some parents are really nervous about starting that discussion. So when would you say is the right time? Is it when our kids are going through puberty? Is it when our kids start to have their first relationship? Is it long before that? When do I talk about these things?
Generally, I would say that it usually happens by age 5, 4, 5. You know, I'm talking real early, but it doesn't have to be initiated by parents. They just need to be in tune. I mean, the child asks why the butterfly is on the flower. You answer the question, right?
Yes.
Child asks, how did I get into my belly? Answer the question. If you don't have emotional baggage about it, then you answer the question. Daddy put his penis in me, and he has a sperm, and I have an egg, and then a baby grows.
Yeah.
Just like the flower and the butterfly, and you know, moving the seed from flower to whatever, or animal kingdom type thing. And also engaging with children. You know, if you look at bird nests, or you have a pet, and seeing the birth. Like I didn't spay my cats for that reason. I said my children will see birth. Also, my children saw the birth, except for the first one, of course. He didn't see his own birth. But then each child saw the subsequent birth.
Wow. Most families don't do that. That's interesting.
Exactly. So I bring them to the birth scene. They practice. You know, when I was pregnant with my third one, my second one, you know, I showed him all the books with photographs of, and now you can do videos of birth and of how the baby is growing in the belly. So we talked about it every day. And then every day he would get, it was summer pregnancy, so I had those loose dresses. And he would get under the dress, cover himself, and then he would come out. The baby came out!
Oh, that's so cute.
In the home birth, When the baby came out, we heard the little voice. The baby came out. The second day.
Oh, man.
And they got into the water with me. My oldest son cut the umbilicus cord when it wasn't pulsing anymore.
Yeah.
So the whole thing of being part of life and seeing birth, it also helps against jealousy.
Oh, that's interesting, too.
Because
Can you say a little about that?
Yeah. You know, when a baby is born in a hospital and the child associate the birth with all of a sudden my mother disappeared, my grandma took me, had no idea, you know, for a few days I had no mother. And then she comes again with this other person. You know, it's like your husband comes home with another beautiful wife that he loves, or your wife comes home with another lover saying, you know, I like you so much, I decided to have another one. It's pretty shocking. It's pretty shocking. But when they are totally part of it, they're actually, it's not that it would prevent jealousy completely. That has to do with age difference and personality. But it would make it so much easier when it's not surprise and it's not associated with not seeing mother.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, so we did it at home and the children were with it. And if you have to do it in hospital, the children can still be there. Of course, if it's a hospital birth that's a violent birth, which sometimes hospital births are not so peaceful, then that doesn't fit children to see that.
Right.
But if you have a peaceful birth and you have a peaceful attitude about it, of celebrating, and we put classical music and we chatted and laughed, and one of the children was jumping up and down the whole time that I had the contractions and just waiting, you know. So we had a party. We had friends to help. So it starts right there. Definitely.
Wow. That's a great story. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
One other thing that you mentioned, and I wanted to make sure that we got to, was you said that we can do things in a way that will sex-proof our kids. And I think what you meant by that was that when they see porn, which is not an if, it's a when, because it is out there and kids are coming across it at younger and younger ages, like 8 years old. So when they come across porn, they're not seduced by it. They're not taken by it. They don't get the wrong idea.
Yes, absolutely. And that has to do with awareness of their own body, connection, what you said in the beginning about associating pleasure with a respectful relationship with someone you love. And to really prove it is to create a child's self-reliance. And that starts in babyhood. And it starts, I'll give you a bunch of examples, like sleep. If a baby or a young child wants to sleep with you, if you say, no, you have to sleep in your own bed, what are you telling the person? You're saying somebody else knows better what you should do with your body. See? So I'm saying start with responding to the child respectfully. You know, emotional self-expression, food, you know, don't have only healthy food at home. But then if they don't want to eat dinner and instead they want an egg or a yogurt or something, that's their body. You don't want to give them a message. You don't know about your body. Someone else knows better than you, especially an adult, somebody bigger. They can tell you what's pleasing to your body, because then they can be molested a lot more easily. It's not just a porn. They're not learning. Or I remember somebody tapping on a head of a 7-year-old child of mine. And I said right away, loud and clear, excuse me, sir, no touching without permission. Which is the opposite of teach grandma goodbye. Kiss grandma goodbye. I don't say to a child, kiss grandma goodbye, or say please and thank you. They can learn it from modeling. They want to. It's fine. But to tell them what to say, to tell them who to touch against their will, just trains them to not feel fully in their body, confident, and allowing for themselves to stay with themselves. That also includes respecting lots of other things with that require body. Like if a child wants to not wear a coat, and you think it's really cold, but it's up to the child. They decide. Do I want to wear a pajama for bed? No, I want just to be in my underwear. I want to run barefoot on the snow. My children run barefoot on the snow. And no, you don't catch colds like this. That's a whole fallacy. for anybody that thinking, wait a minute, but she's being an irresponsible mother. No, my children were very healthy, didn't get calls from running barefoot for a few minutes on the snow and then deciding, ouch, that hurts. But it's not that I didn't inform them. I would tell them it's really cold, but you can try it. And they played a game of laying bareback on the snow and counting how many seconds they can stay.
Right.
And then you come in and stand by the fire. It's all a learning experience, but they decide their own body. So if you go places, you can take a coat and boots with you, but let the child decide when they go to sleep. Don't decide their bedtime because you think they're tired. Don't decide if they should wear a coat, if it's time to be hungry and time to eat. What to eat? Yeah, you can, of course, guide. You don't go and eat ice cream at bedtime and stay awake half the night or whatever, or something unhealthy. But you want to model respecting their body. Don't touch without permission. You don't have to kiss mommy. If grandma says, kiss me, hug me, and your child doesn't want to do it, tell your child, you don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
Do it if you love to, only if you love to. And if grandmother says, but you love to, says, you decide for yourself. Because kiss me, hug me before they want to is a mild molestation.
Yeah, I can really see that example. I can also anticipate that several parents would be like, no, I need my own space. I need my own time away from the kids for my own sanity. And so 8:30 is your bedtime. So I see how there could be a push-pull around that.
Yes, and I have a lot of articles on how to create a bedtime that also respect the parents, but it's not our subject today.
No, but yeah.
In principle,
thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah, but in principle, it's managing it so that you get your break, but also that the child has a sense, I'm tired and wanting to go to sleep. And there are lots of ways to get to that so that it's not forcing. Because if you force them when they're not tired, it takes 3 hours and you don't end up getting your time anyway.
Right. That's a great point.
So It's better to find the right time, the right point, maybe changing when they get up, maybe changing something else or what they eat before or what they do, maybe a little more running in the afternoon. There's, like I said, it's a whole session of its own.
Okay.
But in terms of this, securing that the child wouldn't be hurt, molested, or be interested in porn. If a child's self-esteem is high, if my body is mine and I do what's pleasing me, not to please grandma, not to please mommy and daddy. Even parents, if a child at a certain age just doesn't want the kiss anymore and wipes it off, ask permission. May I kiss you? You don't, they're not a package just for your own, entertainment. They're adorable. We want to. Yeah. But you want them to be self-directed and you want them to own their bodies and to know that no one else can touch it. And then at older ages, you can talk about these things, of course, as they start encountering other people in society and maybe in unsafe situations or with friends, etc. And it's all right to talk as it comes up or to bring it up if you have a concern. Let's say they go to a slumber party at an older age.
Yeah.
And you want to remind them, in a slumber party, you're in pajamas and in bed. Make sure your body is your own and nobody has a right to touch you. It's for your pleasure. And a body gives us lots of pleasure and that's wonderful. And it's up to us how and when and with whom we want pleasure. So that's fine to mention that. Yeah.
So why do you think that really porn-proofs them? Just to connect those dots.
It just gives them self-confidence and desire for pleasure that's associated with love, not with fornication. I find that those kind of kids, from my experience, find that looking at that is almost unappealing. It only appeals because they're horny. They want to see this stuff. But if they see it as such, okay, I'm looking at this stuff, but really what I want, like what my most horny of my 3 boys said to me as a teenager is, Mom, I must have a girlfriend. Not, I need to somehow go and have sex.
That's great.
Girlfriend. So what I knew And what he learned is that in order to have sex, I need to know somebody, like them, and love them, which is all what he did eventually when the opportunity arose. And to talk about it openly. It's fine to talk about porn so that they're not doing it in secret. So when you know that that's possible coming up, say, yeah, a lot of websites with porn, and I find it appalling that people would use each other's body this way, or you don't have to say something negative. You just have to frame it for them. That's not love. That's not what we aspire to do. But it's fine to be honest and say, I wish it wasn't there. I don't recommend looking at that stuff. It desensitizes you and changes your sense of what it means to be loving with another person. But really, what I want people to get is that from my experience with thousands of parents, when children grow up with that kind of self-esteem I'm talking about, they're actually not that interested in porn. So they already have that attitude that it's like, okay, this is boring, it may some, horny feelings, or I go and masturbate or whatever, but it's not a direction they want to take. It's not satisfying because they have already an experience of satisfaction of being with mother and father in a loving way and with friends, and they have a sense of what it means to go from that. Excuse me, my cat is just such a butterfly with my attention. Piglet. Anyway, so I really want to stress that the sex proof in general for porn and for molestation, rape, being taken advantage of, that what I see again and again in thousands of families is that those children where the parents have freedom and talk about things freely and at the same time make sure the child's sense of themselves is what they follow. They don't tell them, well, you don't feel like kissing so-and-so, but you should. Or you want to sleep next to your parents, but you should sleep by yourself. Because those things are the same message as just detach from your body and let someone else decide what to do to it. And that created attachment, and then we don't respect our own body. We're not connected to it. Because a child and a teenager who is connected in the way I'm talking about, he doesn't find eroticism like pornography very appealing. It's not that he would never watch it or something. It wouldn't be very appealing. And that's the proof. That's the sex proof more than anything else. It's not so much how we talk about it. It's about having a self-reliant, somebody who is rooted in themselves, connected to their body, loving their own body, so helping them feel wonderful and one with their body, and then they don't have such interest. It's not natural. We're programmed to love first and to be moved to connect physically as an expression of that love.
Yeah. Well, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing it with us. I think that we're probably about out of time because we could talk all day, but I know folks only have so much time to watch video. So I want, Naomi, thank you so much for the time you spent with us today. And I'm wondering, do you have a special offer for our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. I have this wonderful MP3, Raising Children Without Timeout, Threats, or Punishments, which somebody can win by clicking below.
Okay, so we'll provide that link on this page that everyone's looking at, and when they click it, then they'll receive that MP3 to their email. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for spending the time with us today. It was really great to have you.
Thank you, Anya.
Okay.
It's a delight to be with you.
Yes. Bye.
Bye-bye.